Hey everyone, welcome to Birds of a Feather. Today we've got a record player stand makeover for you, and we're going to be painting this and also staining. We've got some lacquer thinner here and we're just cleaning off the wood after stripping it off. As you can see, there's still a touch of the former yellow in the wood grain there that we have to get out. Some right there too. I basically took a heat gun to this and it practically just peeled right off. But it did leave the wood a little bit worse for wear, so have to clean that back. I'm using a heat gun to strip the yellow paint from inside these grooves here. So I've got it on high. If you're going to be using a high setting, be sure that you keep the gun moving. Otherwise, turn it down a little lower. Comes right off. Now I'll come along the other side and do the same thing. We're using wood filler to make repairs on the corner here, and we like to tape it up so that we don't get excess on the wood. Now we're just going to peel it back, and so that we can see where we have made repairs and be able to sand it, we're just going to put another piece of tape there. While the wood filler dries, I'm just going to pop out these pulls, and then we're going to go ahead and sand our repairs, and we'll be ready for stain. So now I've got the cabinet on these wood runners here, and initially I thought I was going to use a water-based stain, but then I changed my mind. I'm going to be staining this cabinet with Dixie Belle's No Paint Gel Stain in Pickling White. So I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to give it a stir, and then I actually cut my applicator pads in half, and I happen to have a serger, so I just serged it. No Paint Gel Stain is thick and has a pudding-like consistency. I've already done one side, and as you can see, it's still transparent. I'm going to show you the other side now. It's still the raw wood. So let's go ahead and apply some. So I'm using No Paint Gel Stain. It's an oil-based product. It's a gel. It's fairly thick. I'm just going to take it off the lid right here. I've already started on the other side. I'm going to come over here and just apply it with this pad. Just spread it out really thin. And that's all there is to it. Just spread out as you go. Now, once this is applied, I'm going to come back with just a cloth and wipe it down. Just going to wipe it back when I'm done. I now have one coat of No Paint Gel Stain in Pickling White on these legs, and I'm going to do a second coat for additional coverage. So I've got my applicator pad here. I'm just going to open up the can. Be sure you're wearing gloves because this is an oil stain, and it's really difficult to get it off your skin. If your can has been sitting for a while between uses, be sure to stir it thoroughly. So I'm just going to dip right in, get some on the applicator pad, and what I've done here is I've punched holes into this box so that I can let it dry. So once you have that on, I'm just going to wipe back any additional with a cotton cloth. This is just a piece of t-shirt. Now I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but let's just have a look at the difference here. One is much lighter, and as you can see, that one's much darker. But you can still see the wood grain through, so it's very pretty. So I'm just going to let this one dry. I'll just insert it into this hole here. And let's just see if I have enough stain on the applicator pad to do the second one. It's a little bit light, so I'll just dip in again. That's probably a bit much, so I will want to wipe it back. Now you can also use the applicator pad to wipe back, but I prefer to use a cloth. And again, I'm just going to pop it right into the box there and let it dry. I'll just continue applying. And there's still plenty on the pad here, so I can just use what I have. Just be sure you've covered everything. And again, I'll just lightly wipe it back. You don't want to press so hard that you're wiping it off. Just make sure it's evenly applied. And as you can see, this is really quick. It's done in no time. So I will likely let this dry probably a couple of days before I clear coat it. And as you can see over here, I've also got the cabinet, which I am going to give a second coat to. Without the doors right now, you saw me paint those earlier. So I'm just going to finish this last leg and then I'm going to move on to the cabinet. So here we go. We're giving a second coat to this top of this credenza. And again, I'm using the No Pain Pickling White Gel Stain. Got my applicator pad. I cut them down. I cut them in half, and I just happen to have a serger, so I serge the edges so that everything is contained and I don't get little fluffies in my finish. So that just saves me on you know, having to use a whole one and toss it, because you can't keep this when you're using the oil-based stain. You do have to toss them. They can't be cleaned out. So again, going to be putting on my gloves, and the consistency of the stain is very much like a pudding. It's very thick, so I'm just dipping in. Just going to come right along. Now this gel stain is very pigmented, so you can apply as many coats as you like. It really depends on how much of the grain you want to see through and the intensity of the color. And I just felt that one coat was just a little too light for this. So I'm much preferring this. I might even do 3. I'll just wait for this to dry and see how I feel. So what you want to do is come along and you want to apply it with the grain. What you don't want to do is swirl it on like this. Just want to take long strokes with the grain. So I'm just going to dip in a little bit more and I'll finish off at the edge here. Just come back with long strokes. Make sure I've got coverage everywhere. I'm just going to come along the front here. I know you can't see this, but I've got some excess on the applicator. I'm just going to do along the edge. Okay, now that that's done, I'm just going to come back with a cloth and just lightly go back over just to make sure there's no excess. And again, I'm just coming along with the grain. It's as easy as that. So I'm just going to bring the camera around so you can see how that's looking. I'll probably let this dry just a couple of days and then I'm going to top coat it with a clear coat. I'll either use something like a gator hide or maybe even just a satin. And I've got the legs drying over here on the box. And here's a sneak peek of another project I've been working on. So I'm just going to complete the sides. You've seen how it's done. I'm not going to film this, but I just want to show you the difference between one coat and two on the top there. You can see that the single coat is much more transparent, and you've got a much more pigmented finish on the top there. We let the oil-based stain dry for 72 hours before coming back to clear coat with satin. And what we actually did was we watered it down a little. We were finding it just a little too thick to spray, so we did water it down. For the doors, we're spraying on Silk all-in-one mineral paint, and we also watered that down in a ratio of 1 ounce of water to a 16-ounce container of the paint. You'll notice that I'm going right over a white primer, and what I used here was a product called Slick Stick. That's for slick, shiny surfaces that your paint won't normally adhere to. It's a real problem solver. However, I did make the mistake of not letting it dry long enough. I only let it dry a few hours, and I really should have let it dry overnight. As you'll see later, I ran into problems. I'm also spraying a paint swatch here, so I have a sample for future use.
So to clean this, we've cleaned the cup with water. We've added water in here. We're going to spray that out through the nozzle. But then, if we take a rag and put it over that nozzle and press and push the button, it reverses. You can see it coming reverse into here. So now you're going backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards. So the water is circulating, almost like a washing machine in there, cleaning it out. And we'll do this a couple times. You can see now the water's dirty because it's brought the paint out of here. So we're going to put fresh water in there and do it again until this water comes clean.
Now we've got clean water in there, and we're just doing it one more time.
I'll show you what happens without the lid on. Forward, backwards, see?
Now that the doors are dry, we're ready to embellish with this beautiful magnolia garden transfer. I took the time to first cut out the pieces and then lay it out in what to me was an aesthetically pleasing layout. So what I've done is I've just sort of taped my design onto the door so that I can visualize how it's going to look, and I can also see how it's going to stack. So I'm just going to set some of these components aside, and you want to make sure that your surface is free and clear of any dust. So I'm going to flip that back, and what I'm going to do is just peel this paper like so and bend it back. And since I have it exactly where I want it, I'm just going to press that into place. Then what you can do is lift up the paper and just peel back and just lay it right into place. Now I'm only going to go as far as this for now because I do have these crevices here that I'm going to have to burnish into. So I think what I'm going to do is start with this one, and you're just going to take the burnishing stick here and just burnish away. Again, I'm just going to bend this out of the way. And I don't know if the camera picks this up, but I did get a bit of fluff in the paint while it was wet and had to peel it off, and so you can see through. So this transfer does double duty in hiding that little boo-boo. You won't even know it's there. Okay, so now that I'm right here, I'm going to take the side of the burnishing stick and I'm going to get right down into that crevice. Make sure I'm really tight in there. Just going to cover up the paint here. Just use the shiny side, cover up the paint so you don't accidentally scratch it because it is pretty narrow here where I cut it. Okay, now I'm just going to grab the edge here and as I burnish, I'm just going to see if it's going to lift. Doesn't appear to be sticking very well to my paint. It has had quite a long time to dry, so I'm not sure what's going on. But let's just make sure it's burnished really well. Doesn't seem to be want to stick. If you find that it's not sticking, just put it right back down where it was and just go over it again. Okay, here we go. Just got to make sure I'm burnishing it really, really well. And just keep eyeballing that there's nothing still on this transfer backing here, this plastic. Now this is silk paint, so silk paint does not need a top coat, but because I've added this transfer here, I am going to have to seal it in. So I will be spraying a top coat after the transfer is on. Okay, so I'm just going to flip my flower back here. Just out of the way. And again, it just does not want to stick. So just take it really, really slow. And if you notice that something is not sticking, just place it back down. And see if it'll lift. Okay, and again, got to go back over this. Now, as I'm going to show you later, you can see the ghosting around the edges here, so I'm going to want to go over that either with a finger or I'll just put perhaps like some cotton t-shirt fabric over my finger and just rub that out. I think when this is done it's going to be really, really pretty. Just make sure I'm right down in the groove there. Okay, and there we go. First transfer is on. I'm going to flip this back down, position that exactly where I want it. First of all, I'm going to make sure I'm covering my little boo-boo there. And again, just make sure there's no fluff underneath this. And I'm just going to fold this right back. And I'll position that right where I want it. I'm just going to smooth that out as I pull back. And now that it's on, I'm going to burnish as I did before. This is going to be really subtle over the green. It would pop more on a lighter, brighter color. Of course, I don't want to go too light because there is quite a bit of light white in here. And there is darker green too, so I think it's going to look really pretty. So let's just see. Nope. You just really need to get it going before you start lifting. Okay, I'm going to get a close-up on the camera. I'm just going to bring you in closer so you can see. This transfer is being really stubborn, guys. The paint has had a lot of time to dry, so I'm not sure if it's because of the humidity here. There's still a lot of moisture in the paint. Oh no, I'm actually peeling up the paint. That is not good. That is not good. So this is the point where I realized that I actually made a mistake with the primer. I read online that it takes 2 to 3 hours to dry, but that's between coats of Slick Stick. So what was a little boo-boo is now an even bigger one. This is a transfer disaster. So if you want to go ahead and put another coat of Slick Stick primer, it's perfectly fine to wait 2 to 3 hours and then do another coat. But regardless of whether you put 1 coat or 2, you really must wait a full 24 hours before you put a top coat of paint. What's happening here is I've trapped moisture and the paint is not drying, and if you don't have perfectly dry paint, you cannot transfer over a substrate that has any kind of moisture in it. So I don't know if I can save this, guys. I hope I can. I don't know what's happening right there. But I think what I'm going to have to do is pull it away from me here so that I don't rip it forward. Hopefully once I clear coat that, it'll seal itself back in. Okay, there is a touch that did lift. Perhaps I can just touch that up with a dab of paint there. So let me just bring the camera around and show you that first one. And there you go, our first one on. Again, I've turned under my paper and I'm just going to burnish it down with my fingers. I'm going to lift it up and just pull it forward. Now I can take these off. I don't need the tape. Could leave one piece there. So I'm just going to lightly burnish it with my fingers. Hopefully there's no air bubbles in there. Then I'll start burnishing it with the stick. And I'm sort of pushing from the inside outwards. I'm going to be keeping this piece for myself, but if I was going to be selling it, I'd be inclined to just let it sit for maybe 30 days to cure before coming back and attempting the transfer again. So again, I'm just going to lift one corner here, and let's just see if we can get it going. And again, if you notice that it's still on your backing, just put it right back down and keep burnishing until you can lift everything clean off the backing. And again, I'm not sure why I'm having trouble. It could be that perhaps I didn't let the Slick Stick dry long enough before I top coated. because admittedly I did kind of rush that and I kind of forgot to look up exactly how many hours I needed that to dry. The worst thing that can happen is that you've got these sliding doors and the primer, you know, the problem solver, the slick stick, doesn't stick to the substrate, so it's going to peel up both the paint and the primer with it if you don't get good adhesion. So lesson learned from this experience is that the next time I use slick stick, I'll be waiting a full 24 hours before I paint and then another full 24 hours before I do the transfer. Even though I did let this dry for a full week, I did not let the slick stick dry first, so that's where I'm running into problems. Okay, it just doesn't want to stick right there. As I'm rubbing away on the transfer with the stick, I can see that the paint and the primer are bonded together, but they are bubbling and coming away from the actual laminate door. So I have a feeling it is the slick stick that's kind of pulling away, because this door is laminate. It's a faux wood laminate. And I can see that it's bubbling, so I'm just going to press it down. I don't think it really likes the action of this burnishing. It's kind of just lifting the actual paint. Luckily that's just happening in just a very few spots on this transfer, so I'm hoping I can get away with just letting it sit, sealing it in, and hoping for the best. So far so good. I think we're back on track. Fingers crossed. If it turns out that, let's say, a month from now it's not cured, I might just have to take a heat gun to it again and just peel the paint right back and start all over again. Okay, so I'm just going to lightly go over it with my fingers, but we'll see what happens. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of cloth and I'm just going to burnish right along the edges just so that that halo disappears. I'm just going to be really light with this since I am having a bit of problem with the actual paint. I think once this is all sealed up, hopefully it'll be fine. Okay, so there you have it. So the last piece to this puzzle is this pretty little butterfly. I'm just going to peel it right off. And I think that looks about right, coming in for a landing. Just burnish it down. Now I'm going to take my stick and just start rubbing away. I find it's always good just to keep a piece of tape there just until you get it stuck down. On the bigger pieces, I typically like to peel the backing and just fold it underneath and then grab it and then peel it back slowly so that I can get the larger pieces down. But with a small piece like this, it's perfectly fine just to place it as I showed you. Use that to lift. It's always tricky getting started, but once you do, pretty easy. If you lift and you notice that there's still some of the transfer on the backing, just lay it back down and just continue burnishing until you can lift it fully. Now I can see that it's going to lift. And away we go. I just like to try to be slow and methodical, just to be sure that everything is burnished down before I lift. Now, I find these little details are a little bit harder, so I'm gonna go at it from a different angle here. And again, I noticed it's just a little bit there that didn't stick down. There we go. These smaller pieces are just a little bit more finicky. And again, just missed the tip of that. So I'm just going to come over like this And there we go. We're almost there. And there you go. And what I like to do is just go over it with a finger, and then I'm going to grab this cloth here, and I'm just going to burnish the edges with a cloth, just to make sure I can remove that halo. So I'm going to finish that off camera, and let's just have a look. How pretty is that? Here are the doors complete, and the next step is to get a clear coat of satin on the doors. So again, we're spraying and we're overlapping as we go 50% each time we pass. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this record player stand DIY. For more paint ideas, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and ring that bell to get notifications of our upcoming projects. If you're interested in some of the products we used, I'll leave links in the description. Join us again soon for another flip on the fly.